Hey everyone, and welcome to our TYR Wodapalooza coverage. I'm your host, Lauren Khalil. Today we have Adrian Conway and Joey Adduci here to give their men individual picks for the podium. It's the last opportunity athletes have to compete before the 2023 season. I can't believe that it's already here just about.
I can't believe it's here either. And it seems ironic to me. We're talking about like really the end of the 2022 experience in a way, and the beginning of the 2023 experience. It's for me. This really sets the stage for a lot of momentum going into what we're going to see in the next few months.
Mm.
Yeah, it feels like Rogue was just here, and now all of a sudden we're ending the off season, getting ready for the Open. It goes so quick every year.
Yeah, the off season is not really an off season. It feels like we've been going, going, going. But what's cool about it is we have a decent amount of high level games athletes that are actually competing at Wodapalooza this year.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised by that, to be quite honest. I
Mhm.
feel like this is one of those competitions where you're seeing people take the floor that totally intend to get paid. And they're like, I'm going for the podium. Otherwise, I would have stepped back, be resting, and like getting my mind right for the season to come. So to see the roster that we've got, I really think everyone that tunes in online and actually is there in person is pretty spoiled this year.
I'm
Yeah, it's
I'm
going to be.
curious
It's
what you
sorry
guys
about that.
think.
Yeah, I was going to say it's going to be so exciting because a lot of these individual guys are able to compete on the team as well.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about both of them. Today for individuals, I'm going to let Adrian start with his podium picks. Then Joey will do yours, and we'll do reverse order once we get to the teams. So Adrian, you have Roman Krenikov at the top of the leaderboard, followed by Patty V and Ricky Garrard.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm gonna start from the bottom and kind of work my way up. But
Mhm.
Ricky Garrard, to me, of course, has come back and really had a great emphasis on where his fitness is. We know that way back in the day when he was testing positive for the PEDs, that the way that he did, a lot of people kind of threw that as that was the reason for his success. And now that he's consistently showing us that he's up there with the top and the best in the sport consistently. He had a probably not the optimal showing at Rogue. But
Mhm.
also in that perspective, I don't know that those events aligned exactly how he would have dreamed or hoped for. So I do believe that Wodapalooza will present a bit more of a well-rounded test, and I think he'll get to shine in regards to some of the chippers that hopefully we'll see, as well as some of the longer aerobic pieces. So I think he's going to find his way onto the podium. At third, Pat Vellner. I mean, this guy seems to own Wodapalooza to a degree. So I'll say that he's in the second spot because he seems to show us each year that he loves the warm weather. He's getting out of Canada. He
Mm.
uses the momentum to set himself up for success in the season that's to come. But I had to give the upper hand to Roman Krenikov. And that comes down to even some of the events that we've seen already be released in regards to, rings and squats at this point, the clean and jerk and the parallel handstand hold. Some things that I know Pat could perhaps excel at, like the handstand hold. He's good at ring muscle ups. But when it comes to overall work capacity at this point, in this stage in the game, and I've seen what Roman has really shown to us and exhibited through his experience at the games, which I consider, and I know this is argumentative, but I consider a rookie appearance. And his ability to even perform at Rogue. And then, of course, I can't ignore, and this stuff, guys, I don't know if you enjoy this as much as I do, but he took to social media and he said, "Hey, Wodapalooza, save a spot for me on the podium." And I was like, "Okay,
Oh,
he's
yeah.
he's out for blood, right?" And that type of thing really gets me excited. I of course have seen a little bit of him behind the scenes, so I really know what he's got mentally and physically bringing to the table. So I think that he's going to have a good showing.
How much do you think having Roman Krenikov here in the States now, he doesn't need to worry about the time difference, maybe like 1 hour difference for him, but he doesn't need to worry about like all of the travel issues. How do you think that that really will impact him in this whole next season, that he's not dealing with all of the unknown when it came to will you even be able to make it to the games or anywhere in the States?
I think it can lend itself as a tremendous advantage for him, right? There's these external stressors that have been bearing down on him for the last 5 years, trying to find a way in, jumping through all kinds of loopholes. Luckily, he does have a great team behind him. that really takes out a lot of the external stress for him, the guesswork. Of course, he's fortunate enough to live here now. And the topic that I consider also kind of like discussing, especially as we see him have success in the future, is were those stressors really solid and strong motivation for him? Was having that chip on his shoulder or those obstacles? I mean, we all know, being in the fitness space, that the obstacle is the way. And sometimes when you have that like large hurdle, it's like in your mind, you're like, no one's going to stop me. No one's going to defeat me because they have it easier than me. And so I'm really excited to see now that Roman's had some success. He's here in the States. Will his drive and his focus remain the same, or will it kind of be like, okay, it's a little easier now? Yeah, I know I can be a champion. I'm right on his heels. Now that I got a taste of it, I'm going to be there. Or will he continue to fight and scratch? And I'm going to assume it's the latter. He's going to continue to fight and scratch, but always something as a competitor for me, and being in sports from football to CrossFit and whatever, sometimes those motivations change, and then it can change the way that you approach training and performance.
Yeah, I like that idea, Adrian. I think regardless, this is going to be an exciting year just to watch Roman, regardless of which side of the coin it falls on.
I agree.
Okay, Joey, we got your podium for the men. Patty V at the top, then Roman Krenikov, followed by Guy Majeros.
Yeah, so we'll start with Guy. This was a battle between Guy and Ricky, and Cole Sager as a close one as well. I'm really pulling for Guy in this one, and I think that the events line up well for him. It's really going to be exciting to get to see him do a true one rep max clean and jerk. He's put up some monstrous numbers on clean complexes that most people can't do for a single. So it's going to be ridiculous to see that event. He does have some good muscle up capacity paired with the heavy weights in that couplet that we're going to see is going to be really exciting. If he can do some damage control on the longer events, it's exciting to see the progress he's made in the off season. And then after Adrian's little pump up speech, I'm kind of regretting not putting Roman as number one. It was definitely back and forth. I had to give it to Patty V at first, but Roman is somebody who, now that he's here and like we were saying, doesn't have those distractions. He had some stuff going on with Rogue. They talked about some of those events. He had some fueling issues. Those are off-season things they might have been experimenting with. We all know what he's capable of. We saw it at the game. So it's going to be really exciting to see him on the floor with other huge names like this. So he's definitely somebody I think could win, but I had to give it to Patty V, the reigning champ. He seems to always pull it out and know what to do when the time comes at Wodapalooza. So I had to give it to him at number one.
And especially after what happened at Rogue, and that's not even one example. I feel like Patty V has broken so many mirrors that just like you think that he's going to get this great success standing at the top of the podium, and then at the last minute, something happens.
He's talked about it too in interviews where, training and competing against Matt for so long, Matt is somebody who would just go head first into workouts. And he said a lot of the times, like, I know I can pace this and finish second, but if I want to take that next step and win, I'm going to have to, throw out some risks here and there. So it's something that you have seen. And a lot of times, these athletes talk about in their off-season events, let's see what happens if I go and let the wheels fall off. Can I hold on? So those are risks that they're able to take and learn from, and then kind of apply that to training in the future as they get closer to the game. So it will be exciting to see what he's learned from Rogue and how he's able to come back from that.
Joey, you've already talked about some of the athletes that just nearly made your podium. Get into the weeds a little bit more about some of those names that you mentioned, who and why they didn't make your top three.
Sure. So I had Ricky as well. I know Ricky is coming off competing at Down Under. He's somebody that is so consistent, but Ricky's really good across a lot of events. And I think 6 events, it's going to be, they have to line up well for him. So I think he's actually somebody who fits better in that games mold because he has more time for the other athletes to fall off. And he is so good at that grunt work and durable when people are getting beat up. He seems to just keep going through. Cole Sager is somebody who's been at Wodapalooza. He's been really consistent. He's always been there with Pat Vellner, and he's just, he's Mr. Consistency in terms of the offseason. You always see him showing up, and these events also line up well for him. He's a muscle-up ninja. He's somebody that we could see do really well. I'm very excited about 2 people, Nick Matthew and then Fabian Benito Celis from Dubai, who just ended up beating Brent Bukowski. I'm excited to see those guys show up and see how they pan out.
Okay, Adrian, who just made the cut or didn't make the cut for you?
To be honest, we're throwing around some of the same names. I had Guy Malheiros right there on the outside looking into the podium. I also had Nick Matthew. I'm equally excited to see what Fabian brings to the table here in Miami with a change of scenery for him and, of course, a more broad pool to compete against. A lot of these guys, again, the big question mark is how will they perform outside of that power-based energy system? They're going to put on a great show for us when it comes to some skills and some one rep maxes. But my question mark is how long will these events get? What kind of in what form will we see running appear here, and for how long, and then how many events? And of course, now that we have an idea of what, unless there's more than one swim event, we have an idea of what that looks like. I think those were some of the questions and the events that left some of these individuals outside of my podium. But they're going to give us a show on some heavy loads and some high skills. We know Nick Matthew brought a wonderful one to the CrossFit Games and even did the same thing on that back squat box jump workout at the Rogue Invitational. So these guys have tremendous capacity. That's for sure.
When we look at the men versus the women, we have several individual men who are high level from the CrossFit Games. When you look at the women's roster, it's very different. You have to go, I think, almost to like 16th place before you see one of the higher level athletes. Do you guys have any theories or ideas on why like the men's individual is so competitive compared to the women's?
I'm going to go out on a whim and say that, and this is biased. I hope that, the men that were at Rogue don't take offense to this, but the ladies showed up and showed out a lot at Rogue. And I think that, a lot of them probably had to navigate and negotiate exactly when the timing would be right in their season to do so. And it's funny, but in our sport, a lot like many others, the women hold their deck of cards very close to their chest. If you're in the back at the CrossFit Games, there are things that happen on the men's side, the jovial, the joking, the trash talk, and the women are a bit more reserved and serious. And you might even see some mean glares go across the floor from time to time. But I mean that in a way to kind of paint this picture for people and help them understand there's tremendous strategy in where a lot of athletes are going to choose to compete and when. If someone's in the thick of some strength training, they're going to need to take time and not reload or deload and prepare for a competition and to set themselves up for more success in the long term and through the season that matters most to them. And so I think we might just be seeing a little bit of this at the top of the women's field. They're rejuvenating their bodies. They're making sure they stay focused on what matters most. And they're, trudging forward. And this could be a whole nother podcast episode. But some of the women are probably making way better money than the men, and they don't need to show up as often to compete and try to win that dollar bill.
Ooh, I like that thought. I see where your head's at. Because 75K, I mean, that ain't a cheap payout.
Hey, yeah. I might need to go get in shape really quick, and they might if they let me wear a dress, that'd be the only chance. Yeah.
Joey, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, if you look at the top of the leaderboard, you see, somebody like Matt is keeping her kind of in the dungeon and they're just training away. He knows exactly what probably the next year looks like for her. And then obviously we saw what Laura did at Rogue. So for her, it really doesn't make sense unless it's a monetary thing to go and test herself against the field again, because she already knows she can dominate an off-season event. So it's more so, hey, what is going to give me the best chance to win the games? And like Adrian was saying, if she has some sort of plan mapped out, it would interfere with that long-term plan leading up to the Open. So I think right now, the biggest thing is where they're at. And you see a lot of these guys are jumping into off-season events. With that, they're going to have time to kind of know, okay, this is what I have to change in my training. This is what I need to do going into the Open. But I think the biggest thing is that those people are kind of locking themselves away and getting ready to go as the season starts.
I love it. I can't wait. Guys, thank you so much, Adrian, Joey. We will see you next time for the men's team podium picks.